Before the gun smoke of the Wild West ever settled, there was a moment so unbelievable, so powerful, that it turned a poor little boy into a living legend. A single act of kindness, a dying Apache warrior, and 1 week later, 400 riders thundering toward him. Why did they come? What did they want? And how did a child change the fate of an entire frontier? You're about to find out. Make sure you subscribe, share this video, and comment your thoughts below, because this is a story you'll never forget. Let's get started. The scorching sun of the frontier hammered the dry earth as Eli Turner trudged along the dusty trail with a bottle of warm cow's milk pressed carefully against his chest. At only 10 years old, he carried responsibilities heavier than his small shoulders deserved, but loss had shaped him early. After his father died in the mines of Dry Creek, life taught Eli that survival came from quiet endurance, not complaints. Still, despite the hardships clawing at him daily, there was a softness in his heart the frontier had not yet managed to carve away. And that softness was about to rewrite his fate forever. Eli's boots kicked up tiny clouds of dust as he crossed the outskirts of town, where the sagebrush thickened and the land stretched into quiet, watchful desert. He was used to silence, but this silence felt different, almost tense, as if the land held its breath. Then he heard it, a low, broken groan carried faintly on the dry wind. Every warning he'd ever heard about Apache territory tightened inside him, but curiosity and concern tugged harder. The sound came again, weaker, pained. Eli swallowed hard and stepped toward it, heart pounding as he pushed through the brush. There, lying half-conscious beside a shallow ravine, was an Apache warrior. Dust coated his braids, his chest heaved unevenly, and a crude bandage wrapped around a wound still bleeding through. His spear lay broken beside him, and the fierce strength Apache were known for had drained from his body until only suffering remained. Eli froze, mind racing with fear, stories of raids and ambushes echoing. But then the warrior's eyes flickered open, dark, sharp, desperate. There was no threat in them, only a silent plea. Something inside Eli shifted. Compassion overpowered fear. Slowly, carefully, Eli approached him. The warrior watched with heavy-lidded alertness, too weak to lift his hand yet strong enough to understand every movement. Eli knelt beside him, trembling as he uncorked the milk bottle. It wasn't much, barely enough for his mother's supper, but right now it could mean survival for this stranger caught between life and death. Eli lifted the warrior's head gently and brought the bottle to his cracked lips. At first the man coughed, but then he swallowed, as though each drop pulled him 1 inch farther from the grave he was falling into. Eli didn't speak at first. He didn't know if the warrior understood English, and he didn't trust his own shaking voice. But after a few more sips, he whispered softly, "It's all I have, but you can have it." The Apache stared at him, searching his face for deceit, finding only sincerity. His lips moved, forming a word Eli didn't understand, yet somehow understood anyway. Gratitude needed no translation. Eli wiped dust from the man's forehead and stayed with him until his breathing steadied, though it remained fragile. The warrior's eyes fell shut again, but the tension had eased. When Eli finally rose to leave, guilt tugged inside him for not telling his mother, but something stronger held him silent. He felt strangely bound to this moment, to this man who had trusted him in his weakest hour. "I'll come back," Eli whispered. "I promise." Promises meant something to Eli, and though he didn't know it yet, promises meant even more in Apache culture. With one last glance at the wounded warrior, Eli hurried home under the deepening orange sky, unaware that a single act of kindness had just placed the entire Wild West on a collision course. The next morning, Eli returned with a scrap of bread and another bottle of milk he stole quietly from the pantry. He expected to find the warrior dead or fatting, but when he reached the ravine, the place was empty. The warrior was gone, leaving only the imprint of his body in the dust and a single carved token on the ground, a wooden disc marked with a symbol Eli didn't recognize. He picked it up, running his thumb over the engraved pattern. Something about the symbol felt important. He slipped it into his pocket, unaware it was a sign of deep Apache significance. Eli convinced himself the warrior had wandered off to safety, or perhaps his people had rescued him in the night. With the innocence of a child and the humility of someone used to being overlooked, he never imagined that saving a life could echo across the plains. For a week, life returned to its usual struggle, boots shining, water fetching, avoiding the pitying glances adults thought he didn't notice. His mother worked long hours mending clothes, her tired smile the only light in their shabby home. Eli kept the token hidden, along with the memory of that day, believing it mattered to no one but him. But the desert remembers kindness differently than townsfolk do. 1 week later, the sky trembled with a thunder that wasn't from storms. The people of Dry Creek woke to the sight of 400 Apache warriors lined across the eastern ridge. Painted faces, decorated horses, spears glinting like fire in the rising sun, their presence froze every soul in the town. Doors slammed, rifles were grabbed, children were pulled indoors. The sheriff shouted orders through shaking breath, convinced doom had finally arrived. But the Apache didn't charge. They stood silent, unmoving, staring into the town with the weight of mountains. When their chief rode forward, the crowd parted in terrified silence. He held something in his hand, a carved wooden token identical to the one in Eli's pocket. The chief's gaze swept over the town until it landed on Eli, hiding behind his mother. "Bring the boy," the chief said in slow English. Eli's heart nearly stopped. The sheriff pushed him forward, demanding answers he didn't have. Trembling, Eli confessed the truth. He had only given milk to a dying man. The chief dismounted, eyes softening with deep, solemn respect. "That man," he said, "was my brother." And that was the moment Dry Creek realized this wasn't an invasion. It was gratitude powerful enough to shake the frontier. Eli stood frozen as the Apache chief's words rolled through the stunned silence of Dry Creek. No one moved, no one dared speak. The chief looked upon the boy not with hostility, but with the solemn respect of a man acknowledging a life debt. "My brother lives because of you," he said. "A child with nothing gave everything he had. In our ways, such a heart must be honored." Slowly he lifted the wooden token, the twin of the one Eli carried. The townspeople stared. Disbelief fighting fear, the chief's voice reached every ear. "This boy is under our protection now." As the warriors behind him remained still as carved stone, the chief motioned, and several men brought forward bundles wrapped in animal hide. They laid them gently at Eli's feet, gifts crafted by Apache hands, woven blankets, fine beadwork, silver ornaments, and a magnificent chestnut horse with a braided mane. Eli's eyes widened, unsure whether to step back or kneel. The chief placed a firm hand on his shoulder, lowering his head, a gesture so profound, so rare among Apache leaders that even the sheriff lowered his rifle. Respect replaced fear like dawn erasing night. The townsfolk watched in awe, whispers flying among them like startled birds. Eli's mother clutched her trembling hands, overwhelmed by fear and pride. The chief stepped back but not in retreat. Instead, he spoke with a voice that carried the weight of 100 winters. "The desert remembers kindness," he said. "Where most see enemies, this boy saw a man, and for that the Apache will not forget." Then he made a signal. 400 warriors, silent, disciplined, began a chant, a deep rhythmic hum that vibrated through the ground and into the hearts of everyone present. Eli felt the chant reverberate inside his chest, unfamiliar yet comforting, as though it welcomed him into a world he had never known. For a brief moment, the tension between whites and Apache dissolved, replaced by something rare in the West, mutual respect. When the chant ended, the chief climbed back onto his horse. Before leaving, he said one last thing: "If danger finds you, show the token. The Apache will answer." Then he turned his horse, and like a tide of thunder, the 400 warriors rode away, their silhouettes growing smaller against the burning morning sky. For days afterward, Dry Creek spoke of nothing else. Some said the boy had been blessed by the spirits. Others said he had saved the entire town from Apache fury. The sheriff, once skeptical of the boy's timid nature, now looked at Eli with newfound admiration. Merchants smiled more warmly at him. Even miners tipped their hats when he passed. Eli didn't let the sudden attention change him. He still fetched water, still shined boots, still brought home what little he earned. But something inside him had changed. He walked with a quiet confidence, and the token never left his pocket. Weeks turned into months. Eli continued helping his mother, but whispers followed him everywhere he went, stories of the boy who saved an Apache elder. Travelers passing through brought tales that warriors had been seen patrolling distant ridges near Dry Creek, watching from afar. No one knew whether they were real or rumors, but Eli could feel eyes on him sometimes, not threatening, simply present. And though he never saw the wounded warrior again, he often stared across the desert at dusk, wondering if the man he saved was somewhere out there, alive, breathing, because of a bottle of milk from a poor boy's hands. One evening, trouble swept in like a storm. A ruthless gang of outlaws rode into Dry Creek, armed and desperate. They were led by Cole Maddox, a man known for burning ranches and killing anyone who stood in his way. Maddox and his men knocked down doors, demanded gold, and took hostages. When they spotted Eli's mother, they dragged her into the street, threatening to kill her unless the town handed over supplies. Eli ran toward them, shouting, begging them to stop. Maddox laughed, lifting his gun. "No one crosses me, boy," he snarled. "Not even Apache friends can save you now." Eli's heart pounded as he reached into his pocket. His fingers touched the wooden token. Trembling but determined, he held it high above his head. "I'm calling them," he cried. The gang roared with laughter, but their laughter faltered when a strange sound rose from the hills. A single shout, then another, then the echo of many warriors calling to each other like wolves answering the moon. Maddox's smile vanished. Dust rose from the ridge. Shadows moved. Within moments, riders appeared, silent, swift, unmistakable. Apache warriors descended the hillside like a wave, surrounding the town before anyone could blink. Chaos erupted. The outlaws tried to flee, firing wildly, but the Apache moved with precision, disarming them with terrifying skill. Maddox fired a final shot, but an Apache spear struck his gun clean from his hand. The chief himself rode forward, eyes blazing. He grabbed Maddox by the collar and threw him into the dust. "This town is under our protection," he growled. "Harm a hair on this boy or his mother, and your spirit will wander the desert forever." The outlaws, pale with fear, surrendered. Within minutes, they were tied, disarmed, and left trembling under Apache watch. When the battle dust settled, the chief approached Eli and placed his hands on the boy's shoulders. "You showed courage again," he said. "Your heart is strong, stronger than fear, stronger than hate." Eli swallowed hard, unable to speak as gratitude welled inside him. The chief nodded toward the hills. "We will always watch. The bond between us is not broken by time." Then, as swiftly as they came, the warriors returned to the ridges, their silhouettes fading into the twilight like spirits guarding their chosen friend. Eli's mother hugged him tightly, tears running down her cheeks. The town cheered, but Eli didn't seek their praise. He looked instead at the horizons where the Apache had gone, knowing that the simple kindness of a poor boy had bridged two worlds long at war. Years later, when Eli grew into a young man, he became known as a rancher of remarkable honor, a man respected by settlers and tribes alike. The wooden token stayed with him always, polished smooth by time and memory. And every now and then, at sunset, he would hear a distant Apache chant, soft, solemn, grateful. The desert remembers kindness. And so did Eli Turner, the boy whose milk saved a dying warrior and earned the loyalty of 400 Apache riders who would guard him for the rest of his days.